Finn and Liam. How are you? Well, when we last left Chatterer the Red Squirrel, he had gone into a box that was placed inside the corn crib because he saw some delicious food inside. But when he got in the box, he discovered that it was, in fact, a trap. So, chapter 11. What happened next to Chatterer? Were you ever terribly, terribly frightened? That was the way Chatterer felt. He was caught. There was no doubt about it. His sharp teeth were of no use at all on those hard wires. He could look out between them, but he couldn't get out. He was too frightened to think. His heart pounded against his sides until it hurt. He forgot all about that queer food that he had so wanted to taste, and which was right before him now. Indeed, he felt as if he never, never would want to eat again. What was going to happen to him now? What would Farmer Brown's boy do to him when he found him? Hark! What was that? It was a step just outside the door of the corn crib. Farmer Brown's boy was coming. Chatterer raced around his little wire prison and bit savagely at the hard wires, but it was no use at all. It only hurt his mouth cruelly. Then the door of the corn crib swung open, a flood of light poured in, and with it came Farmer Brown's boy. "Hello!" exclaimed Farmer Brown's boy as he caught sight of Chatterer. "So you are the thief who has been stealing our corn, and I thought it was a rat or a mouse. Well, well, you little red rascal. Didn't you know that thieves come to no good end? You're pretty smart, for I never once thought of you, but you were not so smart as you thought. Now I wonder what we had better do with you." He picked up the trap with Chatterer in it and stepped out into the beautiful great out of doors. Chatterer could see across the dooryard to the old orchard and the familiar old stone wall along which he had scampered so often. They looked just the same as ever, and yet, well, they didn't look just the same, for he couldn't look at them without seeing those cruel wires which were keeping him from them. Farmer Brown's boy put the trap on the ground and then began to call. "Puss, puss, puss," called Farmer Brown's boy. Chatterer's heart, which had been thumping so, almost stopped beating with fright. There was Black Pussy, whom he had so often teased and made fun of. Her yellow eyes had a hungry gleam as she walked around the trap and sniffed and sniffed. Never had Chatterer heard such a terrible sound as those hungry sniffs so close to him. Black Pussy tried to put a paw between the wires, and Chatterer saw the great cruel claws, but Black Pussy couldn't get her paw between the wires. "How would you like him for breakfast?" asked Farmer Brown's boy. "Meow," said Black Pussy, arching her back and rubbing against his legs. "I suppose that means you would like him very much," laughed Farmer Brown's boy. "Do you think you can catch him if I let him out?" "Meow," replied Black Pussy again, and to poor Chatterer it seemed the awfulest sound he had ever heard. "Well, we'll see about it by and by," said Farmer Brown's boy. "There's the breakfast bell, and I haven't fed the biddies yet." Chapter 12. Chatterer is sure that this is his last day. There was no hope, not the teeniest, weeniest ray of hope in the heart of Chatterer as Farmer Brown's boy picked up the wire rat trap and started for the house. Black Pussy the cat followed at his heels and looking up at Chatterer with hungry, cruel eyes. Chatterer took a farewell look at the old orchard and way beyond it to the great forest from which he had been driven out by fear of Shadow the Weasel. Then the door of the farmhouse closed and shut it all out. If there had been any hope in Chatterer's heart, the closing of that door would have shut the last bit out. But there wasn't any hope. Chatterer was sure that he was going to be given to Black Pussy for her breakfast. Farmer Brown's boy put the trap on the table. What have you there?" called a great voice. It was the voice of Farmer Brown himself, who was eating his breakfast. "I've got the thief who has been stealing our corn in the crib," replied Farmer Brown's boy. "And who do you think it is?" "One of those pesky rats," replied Farmer Brown. "I'm afraid you've been careless and left the door open some time, and that is how the rats have got in there." "But it isn't a rat, and I don't believe that there is a rat there," replied Farmer Brown's boy in triumph. "It's that little scamp of a red squirrel we've seen racing along the wall at the edge of the old orchard lately. I can't imagine how he got in there, but there he was, and now here he is." "What are you going to do with him?" asked Farmer Brown, coming over to look at Chatterer. "I don't know," replied Farmer Brown's boy, "unless I give him to Black Pussy for her breakfast. She has been teasing me for him ever since I found him." Farmer Brown's boy looked over to the other side of the table as he said this, and his eyes twinkled with mischief. "Oh, you mustn't do that. That would be cruel," cried a soft voice. "You must take him down to the Green Forest and let him go." A gentle face with pitying eyes was bent over the trap. "Just see how frightened the poor little thing is. You must take him straight down to the Green Forest, right." "Isn't that just like Mother?" cried Farmer Brown's boy. "I believe it would be just the same with the ugliest old rat that ever lived. She would try to think of some excuse for letting him go." "God made all the little people who wear fur, and they must have some place in his great plan," said Mrs. Brown. Farmer Brown laughed a big hearty laugh. "True enough, Mother," said he. "The trouble is they get out of place. Now this little rascal's place is down in the Green Forest and not up in our corn crib." "Then put him back in his right place," was the prompt reply, and they all laughed. Now all this time poor Chatterer was thinking that this was surely his last day. You see, he knew that he had been a thief, and he knew that Farmer Brown's boy knew it. He just crouched down in a little ball, too miserable to do anything but tremble every time anyone came near. He was sure that he had seen for the last time the Green Forest and the Green Meadows and jolly Mr. Sun and all the other beautiful things he loved so, and it seemed as if his heart would burst with despair. Chapter 13. Chatterer is put in prison. Whoever does a deed that's wrong will surely find some day that for that naughty act of his, he'll surely have to pay. That was the way with Chatterer. Of course, he had no business to steal corn from Farmer Brown's corn crib. To be sure, he had felt that he had just as much right to that corn as Farmer Brown had. You see, the little people of the Green Meadows and the Green Forest feel that everything that grows belongs to them if they want it and are smart enough to get it before someone else does. But it is just there that Chatterer went wrong. Farmer Brown had harvested that corn and stored it in his corn crib, and so, of course, no one else had any right to it. Right down deep in his heart, Chatterer knew this. If he hadn't known it, he wouldn't have been so sly in taking what he wanted. He knew all the time that he was stealing, but he tried to make himself believe that it was all right. So he had kept on stealing and stealing until at last he was caught in a trap, and now he had got to pay for his wrongdoing. Chatterer was very miserable, so miserable and frightened that he could do nothing but sit huddled up in a little shivery ball. He hadn't the least doubt in the world that this was his very last day, and that Farmer Brown's boy would turn him over to cruel Black Pussy for her breakfast. Farmer Brown's boy had left him in the trap in the house and had gone out. For a long time Chatterer could hear pounding out in the woodshed, and Farmer Brown's boy was whistling as he pounded. Chatterer wondered how he could whistle and seem so happy when he meant to do such a dreadful thing as to give him to Black Pussy. After what seemed like a very long time, ages and ages, Farmer Brown's boy came back. He had with him a queer-looking box. "There," said he, "is a new home for you, you little red imp. I guess it will keep you out of trouble for a while." He slid back a little door in the top of the box, and then, putting on a stout glove and opening a little door in the trap, he put in his big hand and closed it around Chatterer. Poor little Chatterer, he was sure that now this was the end and that he was going to be given to Black Pussy, who was looking on with hungry yellow eyes. He struggled and did his best to bite, but the thick glove gave his sharp little teeth no chance to hurt the hand that held him. Even in his terror, he noticed that the big hand tried to be gentle and squeezed him no tighter than was necessary. Then he was lifted out of the trap and dropped through the little doorway in the top of the queer box, and the door was fastened. Nothing terrible had happened after all. At first, Chatterer just sulked in one corner. He felt sure that something terrible was going to happen. Farmer Brown's boy took the box out into the shed and put it where the sun shone onto it. For a little while he stayed watching, but Chatterer still sulked and sulked. By and by he went away, taking Black Pussy with him, and Chatterer was alone. When he was quite sure that no one was about, Chatterer began to wonder what sort of place he was in, and if there wasn't some way to get out. He found that one side and the top were fine, stout wire, through which he could look out, and that the other sides and the bottom were wood covered with wire, so that there was no chance for his sharp teeth to gnaw a way out. In one corner was a stout piece of an apple tree with two little stubby branches to sit on, and halfway up a little round hole. Very cautiously Chatterer peeped inside the hole. Inside was a splendid hollow. On the floor of the box was a little heap of shavings and bits of rag, and there was a little pile of yellow corn. How Chatterer did hate the sight of that corn! You see, it was corn that had got him into all this trouble. At least that is the way Chatterer felt about it. When he had examined everything, he knew that there was no way out. Chatterer was in a prison, though that is not what Farmer Brown's boy called it. He said it was a cage. And here's a picture of Chatterer looking at his cage. Very cautiously, Chatterer peeked inside the hole. Well, I think we'll end it there. Poor Chatterer is in prison, and what's going to happen to him next? We'll just have to wait and see. Goodbye, Finn and Liam.